Okay, so let's dive in. It is Sunday, February 15th, 2026. And the stack of papers we have for today, I mean, it's a lot.
It's definitely dense. We're talking systems theory, neuroscience.
Right. Critiques of Jungian psychology, something called the architecture of adversarial validation. And yet, the core idea, the thing that ties it all together, it feels incredibly, well, personal.
It is. That's the whole point,
Yeah.
really. The application is immediate. It's about what you do on Monday morning.
Well, yeah, because if you ask anyone how they're doing right now, I mean, just anyone at the coffee shop or whatever, you get this look. It's more than just tired, you know?
It's a kind of structural exhaustion.
Structural exhaustion. That's it exactly. The world feels locked up, politics, the economy. I mean, the price of eggs this week is just insane. It all feels so rigid. But my actual day-to-day life, total chaos.
Yeah.
It's a weird, weird combination.
And that's the paradox these sources are digging into. We're living in this strange moment where our large-scale systems, our institutions are incredibly brittle. They're clamping down.
Yeah, totally rigid.
But the subjective experience, the feeling of being alive right now is just turbulence, constant change, constant threat.
Exactly. And usually when we do these deep dives, our goal is to find a fix for the system.
Yeah.
How do we fix the grid, or who's the right person to vote for? But this stack of research, it's arguing something that, I'll be honest, it made me a little defensive when I first read it.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, the central hook, the big idea, is that you don't need the president or the economy to be healthy for you to be healthy.
Right.
And my first reaction was, kind of, yeah, right. It sounds like a motivational poster, local order within global turbulence. That sounds nice, but if the economy tanks, I'm out of a job. If the country is unstable, my family isn't safe, it felt a little, I don't know, dismissive.
I get that. I think that's the default reaction. We're social creatures. We're wired to feel what the tribe feels. If the herd is stampeding, your nervous system wants to stampede too. But the core argument here, and this is where they pull in everything from physics to neuroscience, is that synchronization isn't a law. It's more of a very, very strong suggestion that you can, in fact, ignore.
But is it really a choice? Or is that just a nice idea for people who have the luxury of, detaching?
That is the big question. And according to the systems theory papers, it is physically possible. The concept they introduced right at the top is called the simultaneity of states.
Okay, simultaneity of states. That was the first big piece of jargon that made me stop and reread the page a few times. Break that down for us.
So the easiest way to picture it is an analogy they use from fluid dynamics, which I know sounds complicated, but it's actually really intuitive.
Okay, I'm ready. Physics analogy.
Imagine a huge river during a flood. It's complete chaos. You've got rapids, debris, water going everywhere. The global state of that river is turbulence. It's unpredictable.
Right. It's a mess. Dangerous.
It's a total mess. But if you zoom in, right behind a big boulder or tucked away in a little cove along the bank, you can find a small, perfectly calm eddy, or a little whirlpool spinning in its own perfect rhythm. Or even just a single drop of water that's holding its shape because of surface tension. That drop has local coherence. The chaos of the river doesn't violate the physical laws holding that single drop together.
The macro level chaos and the micro level order can exist at the exact same time.
They can, and they do.
Yeah.
That's simultaneity. And the sources are arguing that a society can be in a state of what they call chaotic dualism, this endless us versus them battle we're all living through, while an individual you can maintain local coherence. You can be the calm eddy in the turbulent river.
So my own psyche, my mind, doesn't have to be in the same state as the civilizational narrative.
Exactly. They use the word isomorphic, which just means they share the same basic structure. Your mind and the civilization both have narratives. They both have operating principles. And this is the key. They are independent in their timing.
Independent in their timing.
Yes. You can personally undergo a paradigm shift, a phase transition into a more mature, more integrated way of being, even while the civilization as a whole is stuck in what the sources call narrative exhaustion.
So the nation can be having a collective nervous breakdown.
And you don't have to accept that as your own personal diagnosis.
Wow. Okay. That is, honestly, that's a huge relief to even consider, because I think so many of us feel like we're just waiting for the next election, waiting for the market to fix itself, waiting for some external thing to happen so that we can finally feel okay again.
And this is saying the timeline is your own. You can start the integration process now. You don't need permission from the chaos.
But And there's always a but. To do that, we have to really understand the machine in our own heads. Because it's one thing to say, I want to be a coherent drop of water, but it's another thing entirely when you get that credit card bill in the mail or you see some outrageous headline and you just lose it.
The turbulence pulls you in.
And the sources, they really take a sledgehammer to our usual ways of explaining that internal process. They kind of go to war with traditional psychology.
They do. They're trying to update the operating system, as they put it.
Yeah, so let's get into that. Section 1, the neuroscience. Usually we talk about these things with words like ego, the shadow, projection, very Jungian. Oh, that political party I hate is just my projected shadow.
Right, which
Yeah.
can be a useful metaphor.
Yeah.
But the paper on modern systems theory argues that those terms are, and this is a direct quote, pre-neuroscientific and oversimplified.
They weren't pulling any punches there. They basically said Jung was like a brilliant 16th century map maker. He did an amazing job with the tools he had. But now we have GPS, we have satellites, we can be more precise.
It's about trading a poetic description for a mechanic's manual. If you actually want to fix the engine, you need to know what the parts are called and how they work.
So let's do the concept swaps they propose. The first big one is replacing projection with predictive control.
Yes, this is a fundamental shift.
So instead of the mystical mirror rule, what I hate in you is what I deny in myself. What's predictive control? It sounds like something out of an engineering textbook.
It's biological engineering, and it's happening in your skull right now.
Right.
The most important thing to understand about your brain is that it is not a camera passively recording the world. It's a prediction engine.
It's not seeing reality, it's guessing.
If making a constant stream of predictions about what's out there. Think about it. Your brain is locked in a dark, silent box. All it gets are these little electrical signals from your eyes and ears. It has to guess what caused them. And here's the kicker. Uncertainty is metabolically expensive.
Expensive, like it costs energy.
Literally, it burns glucose. A brain that's confused, that's trying to process novel or chaotic information, is a brain on fire, metabolically speaking. It's stressful, cortisol floods the system, it's physically draining to be uncertain.
So the brain's number one job is to be right, to predict correctly because being wrong is painful and expensive.
Its prime directive is to minimize prediction error. So now let's apply that to projection. When you feel an internal state of high uncertainty like shame or fear or ambiguity about yourself, your brain needs to resolve that uncertainty fast.
It needs a simple explanation.
A simple, low-energy explanation. And it's much, much simpler to compress all that messy internal chaos into what the sources call an agent-centered threat narrative.
Agent-centered threat narrative, meaning find a bad guy.
Find a bad guy. It is computationally cheaper for your brain to construct a reality where that politician is evil and he is the source of all my problems than it is to grapple with the reality that I feel insecure, the economic system is incredibly complex, and my future is uncertain.
Whoa. Okay, so when I get that feeling of pure rage looking at someone on TV, it's not a moral judgment necessarily. It's my brain doing an efficiency calculation.
It's a cognitive shortcut. It's a threat modeling hack.
Right.
By locating the bad object outside of yourself, you stabilize your internal map. Your world becomes simple again. I am good, they are bad. It's predictable, the calorie burn goes way down.
So all the polarization and the screaming we see online, it's not just millions of bad people. It's millions of metabolically stressed brains trying to find a simple, predictable story to calm themselves down.
You are seeing millions of prediction engines overheating and trying to vent that pressure.
That reframe, well, everything. It makes me feel a little more empathy, to be honest. But okay, that leads directly to the second swap. We're getting rid of ego.
Or at least the mystical, villainous version of the ego.
Right. We always say he has a big ego, like it's a character flaw. But the sources say ego is really just a placeholder name for a brain network.
Correct. They swap ego for the default mode network, or the DMN.
The DMN, I've heard about this. It's what gets quiet when you meditate, right?
Exactly. The DMN is the network that's active when you're not focused on an external task. It's your mind-wandering network. It's active when you're thinking about the past, worrying about the future, or thinking about what other people think of you.
So it's the storyteller, the narrator in my head.
It is the author of the autobiography of me. It's the voice that's constantly running, telling you who you are, what you've done, where you're going. I am a good father. I'm a hard worker. I was wronged in that meeting yesterday. That's all DMN.
Okay, got it. So how does this replace the ego?
Because the crucial insight is what happens when that story, that me, feels threatened. The DMN generates what is called identity protective cognition.
It protects the story.
It armors the story. The network becomes rigid. It's not spiritual arrogance. It's a neurological lockdown. The DMN is trying to prevent the entire story of me from crashing. So it will filter reality to preserve the narrative.
So when a public figure or, my uncle at Thanksgiving just refuses to admit they're wrong, even when you show them plain facts,
Yeah.
it's not just that they're stubborn, it's that their DMN is treating those facts as a virus that could corrupt their entire operating system. To accept the fact would be to let the story of me collapse. And to the DMN, that feels like literal death. So it's easier to just deny reality. That explains so much of the feeling of 2026. This feeling that nobody can ever back down or admit a mistake.
Because the neurological cost of admitting error feels catastrophic. Which brings us to the third and maybe the most important swap for understanding the political moment, replacing dualism with phase transitions.
Right. Good versus evil, us versus them, my team, your team. This feels like the bedrock of our whole society right now. But the sources say that's not
Real? Not that it's not real, but that it's not fundamental. In systems theory, good and evil are not metaphysical substances like light and dark matter. They are relational distinctions that a system makes.
What does that even mean, a relational distinction?
It means they only exist in relation to each other within a certain framework. Conflict isn't a holy war against a cosmic evil. It's what the sources call a tragic necessity or structural differentiation.
That sounds so clinical, taking all the passion out of it.
It sounds clinical, but it's a game changer. If you believe you are fighting evil, then you are a hero. You are justified in using any means necessary to destroy the enemy. You're in a crusade.
Okay.
But if you understand you are simply dealing with structural differentiation in a complex system, you're not a crusader. You're a navigator.
Yeah.
Or an engineer. It completely removes the need for an enemy.
The enemy necessity. That term from the Architecture of Binary Maturity paper really stood out. They claim that binary thinking isn't a flaw, it's actually a developmental stage.
Yes, and this is so critical. Binary thinking, safe, dangerous, friend, foe, is not a mistake. It is, quote, immature complexity management.
Immature complexity management. I like that.
Think about a 2-year-old. The world is an overwhelmingly complex place. Does a toddler understand nuance?
Absolutely not. It's good or bad, mine or not mine. There's no in between.
And they need that. A toddler needs simple binaries to survive. Hot, cold, safe, unsafe, mommy, stranger. You don't explain thermodynamics to a child, you say, stove hot, don't touch. The binary is an essential, life-saving, low-level regulatory structure.
It's a tool for a brain that can't handle the full complexity of reality yet.
Exactly. And the problem, as the sources lay it out, isn't the tool itself. It's the problem of scaling. The disaster happens when that developmental tool, which is designed for a child or a small, simple tribe, gets institutionalized and written into the code of a massive, complex civilization of 350 million people.
We're trying to run a supercomputer on software designed for a pocket calculator.
A perfect analogy. We take the simple rule, stranger is dangerous, which works for a toddler on a playground, and we scale it up into foreign policy or immigration policy. And when that happens, the binary becomes sanctified. It becomes sacred.
And once it's sacred, the other side isn't just someone with a different opinion.
They are a heretic. They are an existential threat to the sacred truth itself. And this is what creates perpetual moral polarization.
And the enemy necessity. Because if your identity as good is entirely dependent on your opposition to evil,
then you need evil to exist.
Yeah.
You need an enemy to know who you are. If the enemy vanished tomorrow, your DMN, your story of me, would have an identity crisis. The system requires an opponent to maintain its structure.
Which brings us right into the heart of the matter. Section 2. The pathology of 2026 America. Because this isn't theoretical anymore, we are living in a sanctified binary. And the sources have this incredible term for the feeling it creates, the closet of conformity.
Yes. It's such a powerful image for this moment, for February 2026, because everyone feels it. This pressure to pick a side, to say the right things, to not rock the boat.
And the sources connect this directly to the economic situation, to what they call the poverty crisis. Let's walk through that feedback loop.
Okay, so you have a huge population that is under severe chronic economic stress, high uncertainty about the future. Can I pay my rent? Will my job be automated? So what does the individual brain do when it's under that much threat?
It simplifies. It goes back to basics. Binary thinking.
It reverts to what the sources call binary regression. Thinking becomes dominated by simple, brutal binaries, success, failure, hired, fired, insider, outsider, Win-lose.
And in that environment, everyone is desperately scrambling to get into the success or insider box to survive.
Exactly. And that panic scramble for safety is what creates the closet of conformity. It leads to what they call institutional ossification.
Things getting rigid and stuck.
Because the systems we live in, corporate, academic, even creative fields, start to reward conformity above all else. They describe it as a prestige economy.
And in this prestige economy, it's not about creating real value, it's about fitting in.
It's about narrative coherence and institutional centrality. The people who get rewarded are the ones who look, talk, and think in a way that confirms the dominant narrative of that institution. Innovation, dissent, true creativity. In a threat environment, those things look like risk. They look like chaos.
Well, the system promotes the people who are best at telling the system what it wants to hear.
Which creates this massive chasm between those who fit the narrative, the insiders, the rich, and those who don't. And being poor in this context isn't just about money. It's about being narratively incoherent. Your life story doesn't fit the approved script, so the system literally cannot see you or value you.
That is a terrifying thought, that if you don't perform the correct identity, you just disappear. You become invisible to the machine.
And that fear of invisibility is what locks everyone inside the closet. Everyone is performing, nodding along in meetings, using the right jargon, terrified that one wrong move, one honest question will get them cast out into the abyss.
You can feel that. It's this low-grade, constant tension, this performance anxiety that drains all your energy.
It is incredibly metabolically expensive. You're burning fuel all day just to maintain the mask.
And while the rest of us are doing that, let's look at the top. At the leadership, the sources have a whole section they call the leadership pathology or the smoking gun. And this analysis of the president and his cabinet, it's not the standard political attack. It's something else.
It's a neurological diagnosis. It's an attempt to understand their behavior from a systems perspective, not a partisan one. The framework they use is institutionalized identity protective cognition.
Okay, that's a beast of a term. Let's break it down.
It just means that the entire leadership structure is acting like one giant, rigid DMN, one big ego. The diagnosis from the sources is that the administration is trapped in a phase state of rigid dualism. They have their map of reality. We are the saviors. The economy is fundamentally strong. Our opponents are agents of chaos, and they're desperately trying to make reality conform to that map.
But it's not working. That's the smoke from the smoking gun, right? The reality on the ground, the poverty crisis, doesn't match the map.
And that mismatch is what systems theory calls compounding prediction error. The reality people can't afford groceries, small businesses are closing, is the evidence that the leadership's model of the world is wrong. The narrative is breaking.
And when we see them in press conferences, they just deny it. They say the fundamentals are strong, or you're focusing on the wrong metrics, or that's not what the people I talk to are feeling.
Yes, and this is the most difficult and frightening point the sources make. They argue this isn't just cynical political lying. They call it biological leadership denial.
Biological denial? You mean they literally can't see the problem?
The argument is that their DMN, their neural architecture, is so rigid, so identified with the story of a successful presidency, that it treats contradictory data like rising poverty as a direct threat to its own existence.
So the brain's filter just deletes the information.
It filters it out to prevent a catastrophic collapse of the leader's sense of self. To admit the crisis would be to admit, my story is wrong, I have failed. And for a DMN in a rigid phase state, that feels like annihilation. So they can't see the crisis. They are, in a very real sense, hallucinating a successful country because the alternative is neurologically intolerable.
That is so much scarier than them just being liars. Liars know the truth. This means the people in charge are operating in a completely different reality from the rest of us.
They're trapped in their own prediction model.
So we have a captain who genuinely believes the ship isn't sinking, while the passengers are bailing water with buckets.
That's the situation.
Which, of course, leads to the natural reaction for us passengers. My gut instinct, and I think everyone's instinct, is to scream, to protest, to grab the captain and force him to look at the water filling up the deck. We want to fight.
And that brings us to Section 3, which might be the most counterintuitive and challenging part of this whole deep dive. The sources call it the trap of adversarial validation.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, this section made me angry when I read it. It feels like it's telling us to just give up. It makes this claim that fighting the system is not just ineffective, but that it actually makes things worse.
It's a very difficult concept to accept. It goes against every heroic story we've ever been told, but the mechanism they describe is very precise. It's called validating the threat model.
Okay, what does that mean?
Let's go back to the leader's brain. What is the simple binary map it's using to make sense of the world?
It's I am order and my opponents are chaos.
Exactly. That is the core structure of their DMN's narrative. Now, what happens when you take to the streets filled with righteous outrage? When you are screaming, disrupting, maybe even breaking things? What do you look like from the perspective of that binary map?
I look like chaos.
You perfectly embody the role of the agent of chaos that they've already cast you in. You are not disproving their narrative. You are becoming the lead villain in their movie. You are confirming their deepest fears and, in doing so, validating their entire worldview.
So my protest just proves to them that they were right about me all along.
It proves it to them, and it proves it to everyone else who is also scared and looking for a simple story. And here's the feedback loop. External pressure increases narrative rigidity.
The Chinese finger trap analogy. The harder you pull, the tighter it gets.
Precisely. When you attack a rigid DMN, it doesn't question itself. It doubles down. It clamps down harder. It justifies more control, more force, more suppression. Because, look, we told you they were dangerous. Now we have no choice but to restore order.
And we are providing them with the enemy necessity we talked about earlier. We become the fuel.
You become the battery that powers the very machine you're trying to destroy. Your outrage is their energy source.
Oh, that is deeply depressing. It feels like a checkmate. If I stay quiet, I'm complicit. If I fight, I make them stronger. So what's left? Do we just let them win?
This is where the sources make a crucial distinction. It's not about doing nothing. It is about doing something different. And the distinction is this. Obsolescence is stronger than outrage.
Obsolescence versus outrage. I have this circled on my notes, but it still feels passive, like just waiting for things to rust.
It's not passive. It's a different kind of force. Think of it structurally. Outrage is a direct kinetic force. It's pushing on the wall, and the wall pushes back. Obsolescence is like changing the laws of gravity. Outrage engages with the binary on its own terms and strengthens it. Obsolescence is about disengaging from the binary entirely and allowing the accumulated prediction error to finally crash the system.
Allowing the error to accumulate, so not pointing out their lies.
It means you stop propping up the system with your attention and your opposition. A rigid narrative, like the one our leadership holds, can only survive as long as it can plausibly deny reality. It collapses when the evidence from reality, the economic failure, the social breakdown, becomes so overwhelming that the map can no longer pretend to represent the territory.
It's letting the system collapse under the weight of its own dysfunction.
Exactly. The system becomes structurally obsolete. It just doesn't work anymore. You don't have to push the wall over. You just have to stop fighting it and let the termites of reality eat the foundations. It will fall on its own.
So we withdraw our energy from the pointless binary battle. We starve them of the enemy they need, and we let reality do the heavy lifting.
You cannot argue a delusion into submission. You can only allow the delusion to collide with a brick wall. And right now, the economy is that brick wall.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. It's a strategic withdrawal of energy, not a surrender. But that still leaves a huge question. If we aren't fighting and we're not conforming, what are we supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis? Which brings us to Section 4, the way out, non-dual integration.
Right. And first, we have to clear up a big misconception about the word holism.
Yeah, because to most people, holism sounds like some new age fantasy where we all merge into one big happy blob. Or it means I have to pretend to like and agree with the people I think are causing the problems.
That is not what these sources mean by holism or integration. The definition they use is, different layers of a system can exist in different configurations while belonging to one field. It's not about making everything uniform. It's about seeing how the different parts, even the conflicting parts, fit into a larger whole.
So practically for me, going to work tomorrow in this closet of conformity, what does this look like?
The key phrase the sources use is participation without rigid identification.
Participation without rigid identification. I like the sound of that.
Think of yourself as an actor on a stage. The play is 2026 Corporate America. It's kind of a tragedy, kind of a farce. You have a role to play.
Okay.
You go on stage, you put on the costume, you say the lines you're supposed to say in the meeting. You might even have to fight a duel with a coworker over a budget report. But does the actor ever believe that he is Hamlet?
No, of course not. He knows he's going for a beer as soon as the curtain falls.
Exactly. He participates fully in the drama of the play, but he is not identified with the character he is playing. The sources suggest you treat the prestige economy, the binaries, the whole dysfunctional game as a play. You operate within the binary machinery because you have to survive, but you don't become of it.
So you don't let it colonize your soul. You don't internalize their definitions of success and failure. You see them for what they are, arbitrary rules in a game that's about to end.
Yes, it creates a kind of internal space, a buffer. Your DMN stops feeling like its survival is on the line with every single email and every single meeting, because the real you isn't the character you're playing at work. The real you is the actor watching the play with a kind of detached amusement.
That feels like a superpower. That's the local order. It's an internal state of freedom, even if your external circumstances are constrained.
That is the local order.
Yeah.
And the sources go on to sketch out what a whole system built on this principle would look like. They call it the blueprint for non-dual governance.
This part was fascinating because it's so different from our current reality. If a mature system isn't based on good versus evil, what is it based on?
It's based on functional polarity. In a mature system, opposites are not seen as a moral battle. They're seen as a necessary feedback loop,
Like what kind of opposites?
like economic growth and recession. Or in politics, progressive and conservative impulses.
Yeah.
In our current binary system, a recession is bad, it's a failure. A progressive policy is evil to a conservative and vice versa.
Right, it's a war.
In a non-dual system, a recession is just information. It's the system breathing out after breathing in. It's a necessary contraction. Your heart has to both expand and contract to function. A system that only grows, that only expands, is a cancer. It dies.
So a mature system would welcome both sides of the polarity as necessary information for the health of the whole.
Exactly. It would have what they call epistemic humility,
A humility about what it knows.
a willingness to be wrong. It values ontological humility, humility in the face of reality, more than it values narrative coherence. So when a prediction error shows up, when poverty starts rising, the system doesn't deny it. It says, oh, look, our model is wrong. Let's update the model immediately based on this new data.
And it would have a no bad guy epistemology.
Yes. No villains, only opponents. You negotiate with an opponent, you try to destroy a villain. A mature system understands that conflict is just structural differentiation, and it negotiates.
It's hard to even imagine, but it's a vision of sanity. The problem is we are so far from that. The system we have feels like it's in its death throes. Which brings us to the last section, reorganization and structural hope. And the key concept here is kenosis.
Gnosis, yeah. It's an old Greek theological term that means self-emptying, but the sources are repurposing it as a term from systems theory.
They're reframing it not as a spiritual choice, but as a phase collapse.
Correct. In their model, kenosis isn't something you decide to do to be virtuous. It's what happens mechanically when a rigid identity structure, whether in a person or a civilization, becomes too costly to maintain. It dissolves because it is no longer metabolically sustainable.
So the breakdown itself is the emptying. The crisis is the kenosis.
The crisis is the kenosis. And this is the most hopeful and also the most challenging message in the entire stack of research. The chaos of 2026, the poverty, the political insanity, is actually transition pressure. It is, structurally speaking, good news.
You're going to have a hard time selling the poverty crisis is good news to someone who can't pay their rent.
And that's the tragedy of it. It's incredibly painful. But from a systems perspective, the pain is the signal that the old architecture is obsolete and failing. It's the pain of a snake shedding a skin that has become too tight. The process is agonizing, but it is necessary for growth.
The egg has to break for the chick to be born.
And to the egg, that looks like the end of the world, but it's not destruction, it's transformation. So we shouldn't fear the collapse of the old system. We should understand its function.
But the sources say there are two ways that collapse can go.
Yes. Path one is identity disintegration. That's chaos. That's when the ego clings to the collapsing structure and shatters with it. Path two is integration. That's using the energy released by the collapse to reorganize at a higher level of complexity.
To build something new from the rubble. And that choice, again, comes back to the individual. We can choose integration, even if the world around us is choosing disintegration.
Precisely. Which leads to one last little jab the sources take.
Ah, yes, the critique of the guru model. They get a little salty about this.
They really do. They have a whole section critiquing symbolic psychology, and they point fingers directly at figures like Jung. And you can see them pointing at modern self-help influencers, too.
Their argument is that these gurus psychologized metaphysics. What does that mean?
It means they took universal, structural processes of transformation, put their own personal brand on them, and then sold them back to people as a secret knowledge that only they could provide. It creates what they call epistemic consolidation around a single personality.
The idea that you need me, the guru, to interpret your soul for you, I hold the keys.
Exactly. Buy my book, come to my seminar, and I will initiate you. And the sources are saying a loud no to that. True integration is not a branded product. It doesn't need a charismatic leader. It is a structural transformation of the self.
It's about you doing the hard work of facing your own prediction errors, observing your own DMN, and integrating your own binaries. It's an engineering problem, not a mystical quest.
You have to be your own mechanic. You can't hire it out.
You are the mechanic and the machine. Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. It's a huge journey we've been on. We started with this pervasive feeling of anxiety and rigidity in February 2026. We went deep into the neuroscience of why our brains create enemies and cling to stories. We looked at the trap of fighting a rigid system and how that just feeds it. And we've ended on this path of participation without identification.
It's a massive arc. From feeling like a victim of global turbulence to realizing you can be a source of local order.
So what's the final clean takeaway? If someone remembers only one thing from this deep dive, what should it be?
The clean structural statement is this. Dualism, binary thinking, is a natural, necessary developmental stage. But when that immature stage becomes sanctified, when it gets ossified into the structure of our institutions, it creates pathology. It creates the suffering we see all around us. The only way out is integration. And this is the punchline, that integration can happen in you right now.
Regardless of who is in the White House.
Regardless of the stock market. Regardless of the latest outrage on the news.
You can be that coherent drop of water in the turbulent river.
That's the power of simultaneity. You are not structurally bound to the pathology of 2026 America. You can undergo the phase transition to integration, even if the civilization around you chooses to remain in structural stagnation.
That's it. It's not about saving the world. It's about liberating your own mind from the world's operating system. It puts the power and the responsibility right back in your own hands.
Which leaves us with the final provocative thought for everyone listening.
Go on.
The question we've all been asking is, when will the world change? Or how can we fix this? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question is, have you recognized that your integration does not require the world's permission?
Your integration does not require the world's permission. That's a powerful place to end. Go build some local order. We'll see you next time.